Bruchim Abon B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Egen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harav Yaakov Smith Shlita on Dine Kavos Kemvusel Halacha. Soaking. When is it like cooking? Have the great Tzlusa sponsoring a shir called Egen Shir Torah 718-851-8651. Email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Someone asked me, he wanted to make cucumber salad on Shabbos. Now, obviously, there was no question of boira, but he was doing it and he wanted to know, is there any other problem? He heard maybe there's the problem of what he called kemvusel. He wasn't sure what that means. Then I started thinking back, this shaila comes up on Pesach, when you want to, if you use romaine lettuce that is not grown in a greenhouse, you want to get out the bugs, so you soak it in water or vinegar or both. And there again is a question of kemvusel. There are some schnapps, as we'll see, that are aged in sherry casks, that means wooden barrels of wine that has a bliya of yayin nesach, also kavos kemvusel, as we'll explain. But one day I'll never forget, I was much younger, and I went to an Adam Chash's house with Shabbos Chol Hamoed, and I was in the bathroom. I saw that he had the bathroom was full of water, and the hadasim and aravos were in the water. I guess he wanted to keep it fresh. So this and many more, the sugya for today, and that's the concept of kavos kemvusel. Now you're probably wondering, first of all, why is kavos kemvusel? Where's the bishul? What's the shaila with making cucumber salad on Shabbos? How did that come to bishul? And what's the common denominator between Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Pesach, Hilchas kashrus schnapps, and Hilchas Dalet Minim? So that's really the beauty of today's sugya. It's like we always like to enjoy one yesod that gives us, a guidance in many, many other places in our Chaim and Yeridea. So the emphasis that the makar of these two words, kavos kemvusel, is a sugya in Psachim, Daf Ayin Vav, Chulin, Daf Tzadik Zayin, and other places in Chulin, actually 3 other places in Chulin, where the Gemara says, kavos hareu kemvusel. Now, what does that mean? So here's important to understand this. Now we can really apply it l'maisa. When a person cooks, l'mashal, he cooks basa and chalav together. Chas v'shalom, it's alav deraisa. So the heat causes the two foods to sort of merge, and the tam goes from one to the other. Now both become one. So bishul, the heat of bishul combines two foods, makes them both cooked together. The Gemara is mechadish, soaking something, that's kavos, leaving something in water, we'll soon see 24 hours or more, has a effect of kavos. Now we'll soon see it's not really a bishul. It's not really full bishul, but it's enough to impart bliyas from one to the other. I'll give you a mashal you can relate to. Cucumbers are cucumbers, but then you see there's a food, pickles. They look different, they taste different, the texture is different, pickles are much softer, but the pickles that comes from cucumbers were never cooked. So how did it change taste, texture, and feel? The teretz is, it was kavos. Now I do know that pickles are a more easier example of kavos because it had those very strong pickling spices, but that's the yesod of kavos. When you soak something, we'll soon see, for 24 hours, it has a partial bishul effect. I'll give you a mashal. Maybe that's a better mashal. If meat falls into juice, orange juice, and you keep it there for 24 hours, if you're a connoisseur, if you're a maven, when you taste the juice, you'll taste a meat flavor. And in the meat, you'll taste a little bit of juice. Because that's the mitzias, when something sits in 24 hours, it has an effect. The Chazanish in Yeridea, in Siman Lamed Gimel, quotes his father. His father says that really, in the machlokes in the Gemara of kavos kemvusel. But his father said all agree kavos has an impact. The question is it a strong enough tam? And the shita that's mekel holds it's not enough of a tam. But it's definitely a tam, at least a tam kolosh. But we paskin, without a doubt, kavos kemvusel. But let's be clear. Kavos is not bishul. Kavos is kemvusel with a chaf adimyan. And just like if you got bimkaim koyin last week, instead of a koyin, you don't become a koyin because you're only a bimkaim koyin. So kavos kemvושל is a bimkaim bishul. But as we'll see, it's not a full-fledged bishul. Yeah. But we shouldn't take things lightly. The Mechaber in our simon today is Kuf Hey Sif Aleph, it's one Sif actually. He quotes the Issa Veheta that kavos kemvושל is an Issa Deraisa. And if someone has a suffix, he knows for sure it was kavos. He doesn't know if it was long enough, 24 hours, so Sveika Deraisa L'chumra. Because kavos kemvושל is no simple matter. Now, how long do you need to make kavos? So in the Gemaras that I mentioned, it does not say beferish how many hours. We find this in a very interesting example of kavos kemvושל. The Gemara of Avodah Zarah Daf Samach Ches Amud Beis, there was a mouse that was found in a barrel of beer. And it was there for quite a while. And the Gemara says that the beer was awesome. Unless, of course, the shishim connected the mouse. For ektoisvis, why do you need shishim? Why is the beer treif? You didn't cook the mouse in the beer. The beer was cold. Zoktoisvis, but since the mouse was in the beer for more than 24 hours, kavos kemvושל. So Toisvis says yomo yomayim. So that's the makar that kavos kemvושל is 24 hours. If you want, we could do a little better, because there's a very gishmaka part of kavos kemvושל. The Rosh, also on Avodah Zarah Perek Hey Sif Yud Aleph, has a kasha like Toisvis, but he asks it more lamdish. He quotes a infamous posik that was called Haman Arasha. The Gemara in Megillah says that Haman said lashon hara about the Yidden, that if a fly falls into their wine, they take it out and they drink it. But if Adoni HaMelech Achashverosh touches the wine, they don't drink it. So Frek the Rosh, according to Haman, if fly falls into the wine, it's kosher. So why is the mouse in the beer a problem? Frek Toisvis, he paskins from the Rosh's psak. Zokt the Rosh like Toisvis, because if a fly falls into the wine, you take it out within 24 hours, it's not kavos. But Nebuch the mouse is in the beer for 24 hours. But then he brings a raya that for the cutter point is 24 hours. Because the Gemara in Chul, and it's also in Pesachim, says Basa v'chal of chidushu. Basa v'chal, you have to have bishul. Varaya, if you soak cheese in meat or vice versa, it's only asmi d'abanan. Why? Because it's not bishul. So we'll soon see from here, we see that even if it's bishul, but it's not fully bishul. But the Gemara's lashon is itarui. If you soak milk in meat for 24 hours, that's when it becomes kavos kemvושל. So we have two more Gemaras to this beautiful sugya, and basically what we see is kavos kemvושל is an issa deraisa, suffix is asa, but you need 24 hours to make it kavos kemvושל. Okay, now if it's less than 24 hours, you have to make sure there's no mamash left over. But this is the klal. One more point, and then we'll apply this lemaisa. Let's say you have something that's not just water. Let's say you soak something in vinegar. Now here's a question. We could say that vinegar in other areas of halacha is called a davar charif, which means something that's an eina ben yaimai really has a stale taste. But when you have a davar charif, it has the ability to revitalize a stale taste. Davar charif has a certain koyach in Yeridea. So now the question is, maybe if you soak something in water or a bland liquid, you need 24 hours. But let's say you soak something in vinegar, in pickle juice, which is much sharper, davar charif, maybe the kavos procedure is also quicker. And that makes sense. And indeed, that's the Rosh in Chulin, in Perek Ches Siman Memtes. He speaks about tzir, tzadik good reish. Tzir in English is brine. I don't know in the yeshiva which they know less of, tzir or brine. They're both words are foreign. But tzir, the Chachmas Adam in Nun Ches Gimel, he says tzir is taruvais melech umayim. In other words, tzir is a very strong Salzwasser. Actually, tzir could be a tzir basa, dagim, but for us it's negeya. Tzir is salt water. So zokt the Rosh, if you soak something in salt water, the Kavos process is much, much quicker. All you need is a time sheyar siach. When you put something on the fire, it starts to boil. Why? Because the property of salt is that it gets things moving. You know, salt, the Gemara says, maliach kirayseach. When you have ice, you want to get rid of the ice, what do? You put on salt. How does it work? Salt has a sort of a bishul property that it's maliach kirayseach. Salt is a chemical, don't forget. So Zok the Rosh, that when you put food in salt water, the bishul, the kavos k'mebishul is much, much less time. In fact, the Paiskim say it's between 6 and 18 minutes, but not more than 18 minutes. And since Sveika Derais L'chumra, we have to assume that after 6 minutes in tzir, in brine, in salt water, kavos k'mevushal. Now, this has to be qualified with one more nakuda. Okay, tzir, but who uses tzir today? We don't have salt water except for Pesei Leil Seder. How about vinegar? How about lemon juice? How about any other davar charif? So the emes is, we could say, well, if it's charif, it's like tzir. Especially vinegar, you know, today with the vinegar, if you look at the vinegar, it's interesting. The old-time vinegar, the Paiskim say, when you spill it on the ground, it starts to bubble. Our vinegar is diluted. If you look at the vinegar, it's 5% acidity. That's unbelievable. But the original vinegar was very, very strong. So here my question is, okay, tzir is 6 minutes. How about vinegar? Even today's vinegar, but it's still pretty strong. Got lemon juice. So we might say, well, charif is charif. But wait a second. It makes sense to say, since the tzir chumra is maliach kirayseach, we don't say that by vinegar. So this very question is what we have to clarify for the rest of the shir. And the Beis Yosef in Siman Kufay, without a raya, when the Tur quotes the Gemara that kavos k'mevushal, so zok the mechaba, matter of factly, misham nilmad, if you kavos b'chometz in vinegar, it's the same shear, a much quicker shear, like we said, of 6 minutes. And this is quoted by him in the Shulchan Aruch Kufay Aleph. If you soaked it in tzir or chometz, it's like we said, 6 minutes kavos k'mevushal. The Chai Adam in Hilchos Pesach Kuf Chaf Hey Sif Chaf Aleph, he applies this in a very practical way. Let's say you soaked yayin sarf schnapps chametz tikka in a keli, so you didn't cook it in a keli, but if you kept it kedeshir of resicha, which we said is 6 minutes, the keli becomes chametz. I put cold schnapps in a keli. How did it become chametz? Kavos k'mevushal by a davar charif is 6 minutes, not 24 hours. However, the shach on our mechaba is shocked because the mechaba in one simon earlier, Kuf Dalet Aleph, he equates beer and chometz with any other liquid. Apparently, it's only tzir. But the shach is not finished. Frek the shach in svara also doesn't make sense. Because if tzir is because maliach kirayseach, that's not true by any other davar charif. And therefore, a lot has been written, but I must say that the shach strongly rejects the mechaba's chiddush. It's only tzir that's 6 minutes, other, either vinegar or etc., is regular shear of 24 hours. Now you can't leave the mechaba with a stira. So the Magen Avraham in Hilchos Pesach, Tav Mem Zayin Chav Ches, he says maybe the chiluk is the real McCoy vinegar that is so strong, that's 6 minutes. Today's vinegar, in his times, certainly today, that it's so diluted, that's 24 hours. Bereza Pella, the Mishtabur and Tav Mem Zayin Ayin Aleph, he says, we don't agree with that Magen Avraham either. No vinegar, strong, not strong, no charif is like tzir. It's only tzir because the salt of it is maliach kirayseach. So let's chazor what we have, let's apply this lemaisa. First of all, we have to realize kavos k'mevushal is a deraisa, even sveika deraisa l'chumra. If you soak it in tzir, all agree 6 minutes is kavos k'mevushal. Davar charif type of liquid is machloek gedolei haposkim. I mean, mechaba holds you need it's 6 minutes. The Aruch HaShulchan goes to mechaba. The Mishnah is makel by any davar charif except for tzir. So let's apply it lemaisa and we'll see how things turn out. Let's start with an interesting shayla. Someone asked me this, and what happened was he told me that in the back of the refrigerator, he realized like a few days later that there was meat touching a cheesecake. Don't ask me how it happened. I stopped asking a long time ago. But Lamaisa, there must have been a roast in a bag, and the bag opened. Lamaisa, because it was in the back of the fridge, the moist meat was touching cheese for more than 24 hours. Not sure how long, but definitely more than 24 hours. Do we say both the meat and the cheese is kavos kemavusel? So the answer is absolutely not. Because ikke chasim and aseifa. Kavos is not moisture. Kavos is not germ spreading. Kavos is the chemical process that when something soaks in liquid, because the liquid softens the item, it extracts tam, and it imparts blias. But it's not a word of touching. And that the Issa Veheta in the end of Shar Lamed says for a double pashut, if meat touches cheese, even though it's moist, all you need is adocha ba'alma or klifa, take off anything that was touching, and the rest of it is perfectly kosher. But we'll soon use that in a more practical way. Question. Let's say a piece of cheese fell into a chicken soup. And for sure, no doubt about it. The only question is you're not sure if it soaked 24 hours or 22 hours. In other words, it was a vade kavish. The suffix is if there was enough time. In other words, my shaila is, what's the halacha suffix kavish by bas b'cholav? So until today you would say, what's the shaila? We just saw the mechabes as suffix kavish is also savik deraisa. So kolshkein by bas b'cholav, that's not just one lav, that's three lavim. Bishul, achila, and ano, it's much more chama. Oh, very good. So here we come to back that Issa Veheta. And again, this is very important for the Havan of the Sugya. The Issa Veheta, as I told you, points out from the Gemara that Kavish Kimavushal is the Raisa, but not by Basa B'chalav. Why? That's the Pashut. Because everybody say, Halacha is very real and accurate. You can't say that Kavish is Mamish Bishul. That's not true, factually. Kavish is not Bishul Mamish. It's with a Chaf Adimyan. So the Gabe Isurim, which all you need to make the Issa is Blia or Tam, for that Kavish is enough. But to make the Issa Baschal D'Raisa, what do you need? Leisa Vashal Gedi. And Kavish is not Bishul. So comes out ironically that by Basa B'chalav, even real Kavish is only D'Rabbanan, because it's not Bishul. But more so Zakti, the Issa Veheta, Safik Kavish by Basa B'chalav would be Mutter. Why? Sveika D'Rabbanan L'Kula. So again, halacha is accurate. Again, it's by Basa B'chalav is much more chamadik Issa, but the Gabi Kavish, it does not have an impact. Question: someone had treifa meat fell into juice. So here, if it sat for 24 hours in that juice, the juice would be asa, because that would be a clear-cut example of kavish k'mevushel. Let's say someone put by mistake treifa soup into a kosher pot and kept it there for 24 hours. Like most paiskim, this is also kavish k'mevushel. Now it's not as simple as two foods, but since the treifa soup was sitting for 24 hours in a pot, so that's kavish k'mevushel. And just like if you cooked the treifa soup in a kosher pot, the pot is treif, so you need 24 hours to affect kavish k'mevushel. I'll give you a more common mashal. Today people enjoy using these plastic disposable containers. So that plastic, according to most places, plastic is by layer. So here's the question. If I pour hot chicken soup into the container, so presumably the container becomes Fleishig, because Iri Kli Rishon might impart the Fleishig tam into the container. Oh. But let's say another halacha for us today. If you put cold chicken soup into the container, and you kept it in the refrigerator for 24 hours, so now the container is Fleishig by virtue of kavish k'mevushel. But now I'm going to ask you a shayla that brings us to one of the delightful parts of today's shir, a big yisoid. Let's say someone's Friday night had a lot of leftover roast with a lot of gravy. But it's a big roast, you can't fit it into the refrigerator, so you grab the first pot that you find on the counter, you put in the meat with the gravy, and put it in the refrigerator for Sunday night. Okay, Sunday night comes, finster the oiken. A person is shocked. They mistakenly grabbed the Milchig pot. Because Friday morning they made a breakfast Milchig farina, they didn't realize, and they put a roast with gravy in a Milchig pot. And it sat 2 mayonnaise lays from Friday till Sunday. So the chayra, this is a nightmare. This very delicious roast has to go in the garbage. So as we always say, when it comes to halacha, masa, especially with throwing out things, don't be too quick. Let me ask you a more serious shayla. Let's say someone cooked the roast in the Milchig pot. So we'll say throw out the pot and throw out the person that did that, right? The roast also. Not so fast. You have to first ask, when was the last time you used that Milchig pot? If it's an Eine ben yoimei, if it's more than 24 hours, so the Milchig tam is stale, is stagnant, is meaningless. So the roast is perfectly kosher. The pot needs a Yeshua, because the pot is an Eine ben yoimei of Milchigs, and a ben yoimei of Fleishigs, you have to kasher it. Now let me point out something that's beautiful. Let's imagine that you took this Milchig pot that was used for Rina at 10 o'clock. Okay? You put in meat with roast into the Milchig ben yoimei. It looks terrible. But let's see how it plays itself out. Because tomorrow, Shabbos morning, 10 o'clock, the bell starts to ring. The Milchig blias reached the expiration date. It's expired. Milchig blias no longer are Milchig blias. They are stagnant. So the bell, the expiration date of the Milchig blias rang. When does it become basu b'cholav, kavos? 8 o'clock after the suit when you put in the meat. So the Shach and Taz, the beginning of our Simon, point out when you put a real kavos in a pot of Milchigs, it's almost never shaykh that it affects the meat. Because the expiration date for the milk is way long before the actual commencement of the kavos. Now the Prichodosh, I know why he writes this because the Kamat not shaykh, but the Prichodosh Sivkat Na'alav says if a person is mamish a zarish and kamayu, and you have to be really fast, empties out the milchigs, cleans it, and puts the meat in, toichadei diba somehow, maybe then you could have kavos kemavushl in this case. Because he says that regarding the kavos comes after after me'es la'es. The pogum part comes me'es la'es. So I'm sorry, if I could just forget, it becomes stagnant after me'es la'es, a minute after, a second after, whatever it is. But so therefore it comes out that could be if you do it simultaneously, maybe then. Because as he says that the kbosha is beside me'es la'es, v'nois tam levagam lohavi ela acha me'es la'es. But the Rebbe said this is a good, very kedai to mention. Because if someone used a Fleishig or a plastic container and he put in milk, unless he put it in simultaneously, it would not be a problem. Okay, I'll tell you a shayla. If you have boys, these things happen. Someone took a chrain, okay, and he used a Milchig spoon because he had no patience to find the power of a spoon. Bekitzi, he put it back in the refrigerator. When did you find it next? Next Shabbos. So there was a Milchig spoon sitting in chrain. Does that mean the chrain becomes Milchig? And don't forget, this is triple strength. So it's definitely a davacharif. So Lamaisa, we have the same heta basically. Because the Milchig spoon, even if it's a ben yoimei, it expires before the kavos adds up with the chrain. Oh, but that's not true. Because chrain is at least a davacharif. And that would revitalize the Milchig blias. So Lamaisa, if indeed the chrain is considered davacharif, again, triple strength certainly is, and don't forget, there's enough liquid in chrain to make it a kavos. Because if it's solid, there's no kavos, we'll soon see. But it makes sense that the chrain has become milchigs, which is not terrible. You could have milchigs with fish. I mean, even those that are machmeh fish with milk, but this is a faint taste of milchigs. The problem is don't have that chrain with fleishigs. But this is an example of kavos kemavushl. Now the best eitzah, like in always in hilchos kashrus, always have powerful utensils, or minimally maybe use a teaspoon of Fleishigs, or Milchigs, whatever it is, because a teaspoon, typically, even though it's part of the Milchig set, is typically not Milchigs. You don't use it with hot soup, it's for tea. Okay. Question, there's a true story. Someone asked me, I don't know how things happen, but it happened. He found a piece of meat in the container of cucumber salad. I guess one of the children, whatever it is, maybe they'll pass a tray. The kid said, I don't ask how, but this is the question. And he's certain there was 24 hours that the meat was sitting in the cucumber salad. So here, this is not there's no expiration date. Meat, mamoshes, last indefinitely. So the question is, does that mean that the cucumber salad is Fleishig? Well, not the end of the world, but you can't have it for parva. So this is totally in the original machlokes, because if vinegar is not even strong vinegar, according to the Mishnah, even strong vinegar is not a tzir, so then it's only a problem if it's at 24 hours. If it is a tzir, then even less. So here, if he said it's at 24 hours, then a taka would be a problem. Now, the emphasis, he said he used lemon juice and a lot of sugar that neutralized the lemon juice. I said, true. But once it's sat for 24 or more hours, so it's not less than water. So the only heta would be before 24 hours, then I would say taki right. And you could be making by lemon juice, even vinegar like the Mishnah. But this sat for 24 hours, it's treated as Fleishigs. As the meat that it was Fleishig. Question, someone had a basin, a shissel, he put all the Fleishig dishes Friday night, and when he washed it, Matzoi Shabbos, Sunday morning, he found the Milchig dish stuck on the bottom. Cutlery, whatever it might be. So this is a big sugi, as we know, but we're talking about that there's no mamoshes that would make a problem. It's only the blias of the Fleishig dishes with the Milchig cutlery. So again, here we certainly have the heta of the expiration date. The Milchig bliyas expire before this kavos kemvושל. Someone said one of the rebbeim in yeshiva told me when he heard the shaila that he was in yeshiva a long time ago. It was a yeshiva shematzav. Obviously, his dira days, days and daze, because there's a lot of unclarity in the dira. They had a minig, quote unquote. They had a big cup, and all the cutlery they used, they stuck into that cup with water. And Friday afternoon, the kavod Shabbos, one bacha washed all the cutlery for the whole dira. And they switched off washing dishes. The whole week they don't want to wash dishes. Until someone says, what are you doing? You have mamoshes of Fleishig on the Fleishig cutlery and the Milchigs. And they went to a Rav who promptly said they have to kasher all the dishes. So that would be a case of mamoshes that made the water posul b'cholav. And that would make the dishes a shriya in posul b'cholav. Question, again, if you have boys, this is very much negeya. Someone cut a pickle with a Fleishig knife. Okay, so it's Fleishig. Pickle is a davacharav, no doubt about it. The problem is he didn't finish, put back the pickle in the jar. So now we have a problem because if the pickle's Fleishig, that might affect the jar. So even if it's not, if you don't hold that it's considered seer, but it's sat for 24 hours. So we said this many times, I'll say it again, it's always kedai in the house to have parva knives. Cut pickles, onions, garlic. We had childless more than once. People made a delicious roast, but they chopped it because they cut the onion with a milchig knife, and it's a problem. So we always say, it's kedai to have 3 parva knives in the house at all time. Why 3? Well, the first one always gets lost. The second one, someone cut cake and left it in the freezer together with the cake. So hopefully from 3, you have 1. And I know there's some experience that this is probably pretty accurate. So if you start with 3, hopefully you have at least 1. But don't use Fleishig knives or Milchig knives cutting onions because it ends up with problems. Question that introduces us to another beautiful part of the sugya. This is the ma'aseh shehaya. Someone made Milchigs, their own Milchig ice cream, and they froze it in a bowl that was good to freeze ice cream. The problem is they used by mistake, a parva bowl, which is not the end of the world, but they want to know, does that mean the bowl becomes parva? But milchigs like the ice cream. The same shaila could be if you made the milchig ice cream in a Fleishig bowl. But their question was parva. So the emphasis is it sat for more than 24 hours. Maybe kavos kemvושל, maybe it gave, and this is mamoshes, there's no expiration date. However, here we come to a beautiful yisoid. Because Enechanami, the Beis Lechem Yehuda, as other Paiskim, the El Yerabin, Archayim, Shinchaf, Yud Beis, says, well, liquid is liquid. This was a liquid. The ice cream before it froze was a liquid. It has lachluchias, Tyrus Mashkim. In other words, frozen ice cream is still like a liquid ice cream. However, most Paiskim go with the Minchas Yaakov and the Tshuva and Simon Yudalid, that he says when something is a liquid, Enechanami, it makes kavos kemebusel. Once it freezes, when it's frozen, it can no longer make kavos kemebusel. Now the emes is, this is very easy to understand, because let's say you have a food that spoils after a few days. So you put it in the freezer, it stays. Why? When something is frozen, it freezes. In English, they freeze, it's frozen. What does that mean? Nothing moves. The cooking of kavos is the moisture, the liquid. How could it be kavos if it's frozen? Zeichel adava, we said 2 solids that are touching, there's no kavos. So how could it be kavos by a frozen item? And the Chavas Das, Chometz Adam, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Aketshuva, all quote this la'alacha. That if you put the Milchig ice cream liquid into even a Fleishig bowl, and it sat until it froze for 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever time it takes, that's not enough. Once it froze, you stop the clock. So the ice cream remains kosher, even if it's in a Fleishig bowl. The bowl is kosher, and the parva bowl is still parva, because when something is frozen, it stops the kavos process. Let's go a step further. Someone found, again, I don't know what people ask me these shilas, but it's a true story. He found a piece of meat in the mayonnaise. And it was there, he knows, for more than 24 hours. Now, mayonnaise is not frozen. So even if you hold mayonnaise that has vinegar is not like tzir, but it's out for 24 hours. So here we have a third rush. We have the rush in Chulin, the rush in Psachim. This is the rush in the Tshuvas, Klal Chaf, Sif Aleph. The rush has a shayla. There was a mouse found in Shuman, in congealed fat. So make a long story short, the assumption was the mouse was there for 24 hours. But Zok the rush, that if you would shake this Shuman slightly, would the Shuman move? Not really. It's like a semi-salad. So he says, if you mananei it, is the Shuman liquid or is it a semi-salad? If it's a semi-salad, it's considered like a salad. And there's no kavos. So even if it sat for 48 hours, you have to take out the mouse, of course, the area around it that has some mushes, some residue, but the Shuman is unaffected. And this is quoted in Yeridea, in Kuf Dalet Sif Aleph. So the Pais can learn from this an important qualification of kavos. Kavos is only in a liquid. We saw frozen is not a liquid. But how about something which is a good example like mayonnaise? The mayonnaise is not a liquid. And when you shake the jar slightly, it doesn't move like liquid. Mayonnaise is considered a solid. And whatever was in the area of the meat has to be removed, and the rest of the mayonnaise remains strictly parva. I saw the Sheva Kasi in Chelik Gimel Simon Chaf Beis, Sif Cotton Beis has a shayla where there was a little bit butter and honey. The story was someone buttered their bread, then used the same knife to take out honey. Because there was butter in honey. So he says it depends on the consistency of the honey. If it's a liquidy type of honey, then kavos kemebusel because of the butter. But if it's a thick honey, there's no kavos kemebusel. I'll tell you a third shayla. I saw this. I don't know how it happened, but a person on Pesach, Chol Hamoed Pesach, they had butter they bought for Chol Hamoed, and they opened it. It was already opened, but they took off the cover, and there was crumbs on top of the butter. That is a true story. What happened? Obviously, one of the children before Pesach wanted to have bread, and they saw butter. They didn't know it was Pesach butter. And children are too lazy to get the knife and butter the bread. It's much quicker to rub the bread onto the butter and butter the bread. So now this woman had the shock of a life. There's crumbs on the butter. Now, Lamaisa, no one would ask to shout or throw out the butter. But la'alocha, I'm not saying tell your wife I said this, but if you take off all the crumbs and make sure no more crumbs, so the rest of the butter is unaffected. There's no kavos kemebusel on a solid tub of honey, of butter. So again, it's not going to happen. You're going to use it, but in halacha at least, that would be okay. Now let's apply this in order of Shulchan Aruch, beginning from Archaim till the end of Yoreh De'ah. Tosfos in Brachos Lamed Zayin Amud Beis has, one of the Rishonim had an interesting idea. He wanted to have bread, but didn't have push the time. He was such a mass, he didn't have time to wash and bench. He would take breadcrumbs, soak it in water until the water was white. That type of metzius turns the breadcrumbs into mayonnaise, and that's what Mechaba Pasuk in Kuf Samaches Yud Aleph. Breadcrumbs soaked in water when the water is white is a mayonnaise. So I thought originally maybe this would be another example of kavos kemvושל, because if you soak the breadcrumbs in water, it's mevושל, and we know bread that's mevושל is mayonnaise. That's why people make a challah kugel from soaked water, from soaked bread. But then I saw the Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Lam Betes. He says, no, even less than 24 hours, the fact that the water turns white shows it lost its Teresa D'Ram B'tzuras HaPas. So I was wrong, but Lamaisa, it's pretty close. That had it been 24 hours, certainly would be okay. Let me tell you an interesting Hilchos Shabbos Shayla. Someone wanted to make kavos mevושל on Shabbos. We'll soon see a good example. He wants to make cucumber salad. He'll take cucumbers and soak it in water with vinegar. So the question is a fundamental question. Kavos mevושל, does it apply to Hilchos Shabbos? So the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos Chav Beis Yud seems to be certain. He says that kavos kemvושל regarding Shabbos. And indeed the Mechaber in Shin Chav Aleph Gimel, HaKovish Asa Mibnei Shu Mevashel. Now here the Mishnah Berurah does quote, in Sivkot and Tezayin quotes many poskim as only midrabanan, because it's not or, it's only a toldus. It's only a toldus or. But Rabbi say you should know that some poskim hold kavos kemvושל is a deraisa on Shabbos. But I think we understand it, and I'll tell you why. There's one of the geschmackster part of the sugya, the Noid Yehuda here, in Shuvas, in Tinyani Yadei Sim and Samach. Someone asked him the following question. The Noid Yehuda, in an earlier tshuva in Simon Chavav, he has a famous tshuva that he says the Rambam never quotes kavos kemvושל in Gans Hilchas Machalas Asures. So he has a certain kula based on that. So on a later tshuva, Yadei Sim and Samach, someone said, I can't believe it. You didn't see the Rambam in Hilchas Shabbos, that kavos kemvושל in Hilchas Shabbos? So Noid Yehuda, with a tone of disappointment, says, I need tamal tmiyosai. Why don't you look closely at my tshuva? I didn't say the Rambam doesn't mention it any place. He doesn't mention it in Machalas Asurais. I know he said it in Shabbos. But Shabbos is more chomer than Machalas Asurais. Listen to this. Why? So the Noid Yehuda, beautiful. Because in Hilchas Shabbos we find, it's a Gemara, it's a Mechaba, that if someone puts even warm water on kulis Espanian, on a Spanish mackerel, so hadachasen zui gemar malachta, that's considered makar b'patish, and that's like bishul. So regarding Hilchos Shabbos, we see a chumra yisera, that even in warm water, because it's the gemar malacha. So I know that Shabbos, there is kavos kemvושל, because Shabbos is more chomer. Now that, Noid Yehuda would explain why some hold it's the Raisa. As long as it's the Gemar Malacha, that would be an is. But Rabbi say, let's go back to our making cucumber salad. Someone made it on Shabbos. So again, if there's no boira issues, l'chara, why not? But let's say this person forgot about the Isra Chana for some reason, and he made it Shabbos morning to have it Sunday afternoon, or whatever time is he going to have it. The question is he oiva alt koivish kemvושל? He's making it to keep for 24 hours. So we'll say, what's the shaila? But here's another problem. Listen to this. When does it become kavos kemvושל? 24 hours later. That's after Shabbos. How could it be shaykh bishul on Shabbos if it first gets cooked on Sunday morning? Because don't forget, you need 24 hours. This is the whole shaila, how it works. It's incremental, but lemaisa, it's kavos kemvושל on 24 hours later. Oh, but we could do much better than that. I'll ask you a different question. If someone chalila puts on raw food on the fire right before the Zman Matzoi Shabbos, so the Minchas Chinuch in Mitzvah Lamed Beis Zriya, the Igleital and Zereya Beis Ches, both say it can't be over. He didn't do a ma'aseh bishul. The first cooked Motzei Shabbos. But there's a famous Rashash in Shabbos Ayin Gimel. The Rashash says that there's no doubt about it. If someone plants on Shabbos Chalila, he's oiva or the rice, even though it first takes root 3 days later. Because he did the ma'aseh zriya. And Zok the Rashash, who nearly who adin, if he put food on the fire the last minute before Shabbos, he's oiva on bishul because he did a ma'aseh bishul. And the Chalkas Yoyev, listen to this, in Siman Yud, he says the Minchas Chinuch and others made a mistake when they said that it's not oiva, because bishul is no different than zareya. So our shaila, believe it or not, should be totally in that. If you hold bishul is like zareya, that you only need the ma'aseh issa, so then kovish the chayr should be asa. But if you go with those, make hold that bishul has to finish on Shabbos, then there wouldn't be kovish kemvushl regarding the cucumber salad. But lamaisa, definitely there's a tzad to be choishish that this would be the real McCoy bishul. Now, even if he doesn't use vinegar, he uses, let's say, lemon juice with sugar that neutralizes the lemon juice. But if he wants to keep it for 24 hours, that is a kavash kimavushal. Someone asked me an interesting question. He took out a pickle with a power utensil. He wants to put it back. Is there a problem of kavash kimavushal? He's putting it back into the pickle brine. So I told him, "Ein kavash achar kavash," and that's not my chiddush. The Minchas Shabbos and in Pei Lamrei and the Chutshani says the same thing. Now there's one chiddush I saw, and the Baruch don't even know I'm talking about it anymore. But when I was growing up, there was something called half sour pickles. So somebody asked Rab David Feinstein, Zichron Livracha, if you're allowed to put a pickle back in the jar. So he said, full sour, mutter, half sour, asa. Obviously, he's concerned that yes, kavush because it's not fully kavush. But I don't know. I don't remember the metzias. I think half sour. I think once it reaches that, it can't go beyond that. I don't know. But Rabbi David seemed to say that by half sour could be yes kavush because it's not fully. It's like something that's only cooked to Michael ben Risai. Okay, I'll leave that for the mavinim and pickles. I'm not mavin at all. Let's move on to Hilchos Pesach. Someone has a problem chewing matzah, and he wants to soak the matzah leilei seder in water. Obviously, he's not makbid with gebrokts. So this is, believe it or not, this is mamash our sugya. If he soaks in water less than 24 hours, what's wrong? Unless the mamash falls apart. Because it's not mavushal. Matzah mavusheles, you can't use. But the halach is a Fleishig Gemara, that Gemara says, yoitzin berkik hashari, you yoitzin matzah that was soaked in water. That's why gebrokts, even though I'm makbid in gebrokts, but you can't say gebrokts is awesome, because the Gemara says it's mutter. The chiddush pella is, let's say he soaked it for more than 24 hours. So the Chak Yankif, Takastaf Samachalak, the Yerab, the Rab all say, then you can't use it on my Alel Seder, because it's like matzah mavushal. But there is a pella. The Placy, Rabbi Yonis in Ayin Gimel Alf, I don't agree, because even if it's kavush kimavushal, but it's not yet mavushal. When does Gemara say you can't use matzah? That's matzah mivusheles. But matzah mivusheles with a chaf adimyan, he can't be soivel them. It's the same yisoid. You have to learn carefully. It's kimavushal, but not bishul mamish. Another Pesach Shaila, that romaine lettuce, as we know, is really the preferable maror to use leilei seder. It's the first on the list. But there's a terribly serious problem of bugs. So Baruch Hashem today there's greenhouse grown, which Kamat avoids the issue. The problem is that, let's say you don't have it, so you want to take romaine lettuce and you want to get out every last trace of bugs. But how do you do that? So what's recommended is, especially during the year when you want to use romaine lettuce, if you could soak the lettuce in vinegar, or even vinegar mixed with water, that has a very strong effect on loosening the grip of the bugs on the lettuce. The problem is, if you do that for leilei seder, you run into an issue of kavush kimavushal. Reb Shlomo Zalman and Minchas Shloim at Tinyana Siman Nun Beis and Hilchos Shloim B'Pesach Zayin Chavav, he goes a step further, and he says something very logical. He says, even if you use a little bit vinegar and water, and you don't keep it too long, but the metzias is that the lettuce are so thin that the kedei klifa of it is already the whole vegetable. And we know that if you keep it less than the sheer kavush, it affects the kedei klifa. Plus, he says, maror has to have tam maror. When you put something into the maror, onto the maror, that neutralizes the marius of the maror, so forget about kavush kimavushal. It's not maror. So he's concerned. The story was that in Tafshin Lamed Ches, the Badatz put out a guide how to prepare the maror, and they said put it in water with vinegar for a short while. So Shlomo Zalman wrote to the Minchas Yitzchak, who was the head of Badatz at the time, that I don't advise that, because he said these two svaras, the maror is very thin, and it takes out the merirus. He says, better, use plain water, and that has to be less than 24 hours. So Lamaisa, that's a Shlomo Zalman Shita. The Minchas Yitzchak replied, and I saw the Tzitz Eliezer Tezvav took the same approach, that Lamaisa, vinegar is not tzir. And water with vinegar certainly neutralizes the vinegar that much more. But we're dealing with a more serious problem. You want to be machmir with this svara, very good. But Yidden should eat b'chamanot shrotzim, that there's so many lavan per sheretz. So better we go mikad din, put it in, and take it out right away. So they felt that if it's not kavos kemavusel, then why be machmir because of a new svara? Lamaisa, the Minchas Yitzchak added a kvoidish Reb Shlomo Zalman that because there's a chasam concerned about kavos, better use the stalks of the romaine lettuce, which is easy to clean. You clean it, you could see it. So basically, that's somewhat of a suffix. The Machzor Eliyahu and Aleph Tzadik Beis is also makel if you do it properly. So in other words, soaking it in water within 24 hours shouldn't be a problem. A little bit vinegar, that's more of an issue, but if you take it out right away, you have many paisim to be saimachan. Interesting ha'ora l'maisa, Chometz b'Pesach is also b'mashu. Now here's the metzias. The water in New York City, kasher einai rov, I see this every summer, comes from a reservoir upstate New York, the Never Sink, which provides water for New York City. In fact, that's New York City property. You'll see New York City policemen there. It gives 1.2 billion gallons per day. It's a huge reservoir running from Grahamsville, Kamat till Ellenville. It's gorgeous, scenic, nice to take your children, but that's our water. Now, I'm telling you the Metzias, guaranteed, every moment of the day there is Chometz in that reservoir. Fish, it's legal to fish if you have a permit, and fishing means bread, lunch, and schnapps, and beer, but it's guaranteed, no doubt about it. So here's the question. Since there is definitely Chometz in this huge reservoir someplace, and kavos kemavusel someplace, so that means the water has at least a mashu of Chometz all over. And this is the issue that we have with today's water. But the emes is the olden days had the same issue on a smaller level. They had water from be'eros, from outdoor springs that was open to the public. And Lamaisa, that's why there were Yidden, Adayoim, that draw water, take water out before Pesach. So even if there is this mashu of Chometz, it's bottled. But most people are makel, and for us, we can understand. The Tuv Tam Vadas of Shlomo Klug and Tlisa Aleph Reish Yud Dalid, and the Pesach Tshuva Yardei Samach Tes, and the Bejana Rav, and in Archaim Tov Samach Zayin, the Ramakil Heikuv, and all agreed to that as I told you earlier, to make kavos k'mavushal, you need 24 hours of consecutive kavos k'mavushal. So the Tuv Tam Vadas says, if you take it out for a moment and put it back, you start again. It has to have 24 straight hours. So Shlomo Klug and Tuv Tam Vadas, tuzah for another chiddush. Let's say the water is not the same body of water. Let's say you start off with kavos in this body of water. Some goes out, a new comes in. So the moving water cannot affect kavos k'mavushal. That's his chiddush, but he writes at the end, Zehet nachon, v'yachal lahayreis het kozeh. So the good news is that our reservoirs are guaranteed like that. 1.2 billion per day, a lot of movement. So that's one heta. Now, Lamaisa, there is a more fundamental heta, maybe we'll talk about it before Pesach, and the Chazon Ish and Shlomo Zalman both said the same lashon, to a mashahu also has to have a shear. In other words, when you have a little bit chometz, that's mashu. But there comes to a point that even on a molecular level, it's just non-existent. A little beer, a little bread, or a lot of bread in billions of gallons of water. They say, I think from Chaim, one of the Gedolim once said that Chometz Pesach b'mashahu. There has to be a ma that should be shahu. Had it said kol shuhu means undefinable. But Lamaisa, that's why the Welt is Mekel. It's one of these two svaras. Rather, there are other svaras. We'll leave that for a different time. Listen to Hilchas Yom Tov Shayal that leads us to another beautiful ha'ara. The halach is to make an erev tafshil, you have to have a tafshil and a pas. Let's say you don't have a tafshil. Can you use a pickle? A kavos kemavushl, is that acceptable as a tafshil in erev tafshilin? So we would say, why not? But wait a minute, why not? It's kemavushl with a chaf adimyan. It's not a bishul. But the mechab in Tovkov Chav Zayin Sifei is mekel. Apparently he held it's enough. But it needs a little hezbollah. But wait, we'll give you a hezbollah. Shemu Sechi Nafshechem. Erev Tisha B'Av, you're only allowed, by the Sudim Afsekes, you're only allowed to have one tafshil. So the Shari Tshuva in the beginning of Tovkuf Nun Beis quotes a Shari Knesset Gedola, don't have pickles or any kavos by that Sudim. Now it sounds like he's saying, why? Because a pickle is a dava kavush, and kavush kimavushal, now you have two tafshilin. Zok Aruch HaShulchan, in Tovkuf Nun Beis Siv Zayin, he clears the shayla. He says, I wonder, can you have a pickle by Sudim Afsekes? So he says, no shayla, you're allowed to. Why? Kavush kimavushal with a chaf adimyan. If you're not a kohen from Bimkam kohen, you're not a tafshil if it's at kavush kimavushal. So you're allowed to have it. He says, some asa, because kavush kimavushal, I don't understand. He says, this is not a tafshil. In Hilchas Erev Tafshilin, Mechaber says that you could use a pickle for Erev Tafshilin, because there you need a tafshil, because something will lafas by yisapas. Eat it with bread. No, a tafshil is also good. A mavush is also good. So Aruch HaShulchan feels that pickles are okay, because it's not a tafshil. But Tzok Teshevet HaKosi and Chelik Aleph Kuf Ayin Zayin, he says both seem to be inaccurate. Because he looked up the Tshuvas Shari Knesset that he quotes, and there he says a word that Erev Tishba Sudim Afsekes is not a time to have condiments, not a time to have kavush. In other words, even if you have only a pickle, it should be awesome. So it's really no raya either way. But Erev Tavshila, we see why it's awesome. Why it helps. Because it is enough lalafas bayasapas. Rav Moshe in Orach Chaim Aleph Kuf Pehei was asked, someone froze their esrig last year. He took it out this year, let's say, and it was beautiful for 8 days. After Sukkot, it spoiled and rotted right away. So yes, Rav Moshe, I don't know, it was an afkamin, it was a yoitza, what I did, because during the 8 days it looked fine. So Rav Moshe says, well, one thing I guarantee you, the esrig is not a problem. Even though esrig hamavushal is a problem, but your esrig was not mavushal. What was it? Frozen. And frozen, not even kavush. He says, maybe if you froze it in water, but even that. But this is not kavush. But the only problem is, if it was spoiled right away, maybe it was spoiled when you used it. But that's the beautiful insight. Rav Moshe is assuming a frozen esrig definitely is not kavush kimavushal. Wonderful. Now let's go back to what I began with. I was by a Talmid Chacham's house. It was Shabbos Chol Hamoed Sukkos. I used the bathroom, and in the bathtub there was water, and there were aravos and hadasim literally lying, didn't soak, but lying in the water. I guess he wanted to keep it fresh. And I heard many people have this Kabbalah, they do, the Zaydas do like this. But the question is, what about kavush kimavushal? The emes is in Tov Reish Memches Tezvav, we find regarding an esrig that if it's kavush b'chaymitz, kavush kimavushal, you can use that esrig. And based on that, it seems that the Chassam Sofer in Yeredeya, the end of Pei Aleph, says that we keep our aravos and hadasim Shabbos Chol Hamoed in water. I don't know if he kept it in his bathtub, kept it in water, b'kitzah, and we have a guy take it out before 24 hours pass, because we don't want it to be kavush kimavushal. Mamish like this ha'ar. Why have a guy take it out? Because for us it's muktzah. But the emes is the Beis Yosef already there in Orach Chaim quotes the Ramban, and which the Chassam Sofer quotes, that kavush kimavushal applies to hadasim aravos as well. A new example, kavush kimavushal, hadasim aravos. But the emes is it's a pliya. The Begur Yankov in Tov Reish Mem Zayin and the Chazon Ish is quoted in Emek Bracha Amud Tzadik Ches. The Minchas Elazar and Beis Samach Tes are all matmiya on the Ramban and the Chassam Sofer. Because kavush kimavushal, and this is the way the Darkei Tshuva in Kufei Sivkot Nezayin Dvar Masuk Midvash Ayin Sham, the way he explains it. When you have a fruit, matzah, or an esrog, which is a fruit, kavos k'mevushel could impact a fruit. But an eitz ba'alma, how does kavos k'mevushel affect an eitz ba'alma? So it doesn't change the status of the hadasim aravos. Either Ramban asers, so the Chazon Ish and others say it's a toyis hatafus in the Ramban, and the Ramban says kosher, not posul. That's how convinced they are that it doesn't exist, because kavos k'mevushel takes blias. So blias of what? The blias of water go into the woody the hadasim aravos. It's just not mevushel, but it's not a food. Lamaisa the Chasam Sofer was machmer, but the Chazon Ish held, and the Mechzalaza also took strong exception. Lamaisa, if you want to be machmer, you can be machmer. Don't forget, the Mishnah says that they used to put the lulav into water, but that wasn't entirely. Lamaisa, the Welt is definitely makel, all are makel, I guess even the Chasam Sofer were makel, to wrap the esrig, the lulav, hadasim aravos with a wet, moist towel. That's not a problem. Moving on to Hilchos Yeridea. Let's say a guy made kavos k'mevushel, they made pickles. So we would say, oh, that's pretty tricky because kavos k'mevushel, but it's not real bishul. And then you're right. In Yeridea Kuf Yud Gimel, the Mechaber says that bishul akum is only bishul. Just like if a guy smoked fish, it's not bishul akum. Kavos is not bishul regarding bishul akum. Question. Someone was koivish, don't ask me why, a piece of meat and a piece of fish together. After 24 hours took out the meat and the fish, can he eat the meat and the fish independently? So this sounds terrible because this is a sakana bas v'dagim. And indeed the Minchas Yaakov and Beis Chav Zayin and the Pri Megadim and the Taz of Kavega quoted, this is a suffix if it's sakana. But the chiddush to me is the Beis Yehuda and Yeridea Siman Ayin and Arugas Abaysim and a beautiful tshuva, also Yeridea Siman Ayin, they say it's no problem. It was soaked. But kavos k'mevushel does not make actual sakana. The sakana is meat and fish that were eaten together or cooked together. So they are pretty comfortable, it's not a problem. So I wouldn't do it, but we do see that there's a sad to say regarding sakana, at least a suffix, and some say mutter. Where kavos k'mevushel plays a very prominent role in the business industry is, we know meat that was geshachten has to be kosher within 24 hours, 3 days. If you leave it 3 days, that was not gekasher, there wasn't gezalz, there wasn't taken out the blood, you can't use it unless you roast it. The problem is, let's say you have a big business and they have a lot of backup, they have a lot of meat and chickens, they can't kasher within 3 days. So the poskim recommend freeze the meat. Freezing the meat effectively stops the clock. So after a day you freeze it and make sure you take it defrosted and kasher within 2 days, because that is another example of kavos k'mevushel. Or freezing is better than kavos k'mevushel. I'm going to say, in other words, freezing stops the clock. Someone asked me, he had in his food, he found a lot of ants. And he somehow strained, he's convinced that he got out every last ant, no shaila. But the problem is the food treif, because it was sitting with ants together for 124 hours. I told him he's right. If there's no shishim keneged the ants, then you have kavos k'mevushel, the blia of the ants go into the food. Tam pogum, not necessarily that ants are tam pogum. The only thing is, if he has more than shishim, then the tam is bottle. A beria is never bottle, but this is not a beria, this is the tam of the beria. And last but not least, I'll leave you with something to think about, because it could be probably a half a share for itself, where you see kavos k'mevushel in a very real way. Today, and I've got it not only today, it's been going on for years, there's a number of different schnapps that have a certain maila, a certain flavor that makes it very irresistible. A regular schnapps, but they keep the schnapps, they age the schnapps in sherry casks. Basically, those are wooden barrels that used to have wine in it, the sherry wine, and it's such a strong wine with such a delightful taste somehow that it goes into the wooden casks. And now when you soak the schnapps, which is a davacharf also, that somehow it takes out the sherry flavor in the casks, and gives the schnapps an exquisite taste. I mean, this is such an industry. You see the kisher and the goynis are going to making schnapps. They sometimes do it in 3 different casks, and they first burn the cask a little bit to make it get the flavor. It's a whole science. It's amazing. But at the end of the day, this is kavos kemavushl. And if the wine was sherry, which is presumably yayin nesech, you have real yayin nesech that's affecting the wine, the schnapps. You'll say it's a small amount of it, bottle. But if you want it to be the fatam, it's not bottle. So that's why this is a lot of talk about it. But one thing is clear, that this is a real example of kavos kemavushl. Laimi by within 24 hours, it could be a problem also because schnapps is charif. But more than 24 hours, those that hold it's a problem, holds a problem. Definitely, those that are makel, a different reason. I couldn't talk to you all.
Shem Irgen shoot, I'd like to give a big shakar to Smith for today's share. Better some after kalash to be a sikum. Chrain ben akasha, I'm a rest of God's bogle, the zakis, that's the sort of figure here, but I'm telling Mitzvah, Shanam al the Chofes, and Sidkai, Yagdol Terviade. Quickly before the share becomes kavos, the seeking kavos kemavushl.
Just the chazal we learned today, Bez Hashem. First of all, kavos kemavushl is no simple matter. It's a deraisa. It's not bishul mamish, but it's enough of bliyos and plitos that make a issa by other isurim, and that's why by other isurim even a safek kavos is awesome. Basa b'chalav that the issa is bishul, so kavos is not bishul. It's only like bishul, so a safek kavos by bas b'chalav is mutter. Kavos is 24 hours by most liquids. By a salt brine, by tzir, it's 6 minutes. That's what choishish. By a davar charv is machlekes gedolei hapoiskim, and certainly is thought to be makel, and certainly by vinegar of today that is so diluted. Hamachmer certainly there's what to be choishish because the machaba is machmir, but that's the issue that by tzir certainly 6 minutes. 2 solid foods, there's no kavos because it's only the liquid that makes the kvisha. I forgot to mention, even if you have a food in liquid, so the Ramah paskins that only the food part that's in the liquid part becomes kavos. What's outside of the liquid is not kavos. So that's a good raya that 2 solid foods certainly would not be a problem of kavos. If you have tray for soup in a pot for 24 hours, that's an example of kavos. Plastic containers, those that reuse it should either label it or make sure you go from Milchig to Fleishig, because that could be a problem. Meat gravy that's soaked in a Milchig pot, as we said, the milk expires before the kavos kemavushl takes effect, so the meat remains okay. A Milchig spoon in chrain, or Fleishig spoon in chrain for that matter, it was left for 24 hours, would make the chrain what the spoon was. If you have a piece of meat soaked in a cucumber salad, so after 24 hours, the cucumber salad should be considered Fleishigs. Milchig dish found in a basin of Fleishig dishes, we can assume is okay. A Fleishig pickle put back in the jar might make all the pickles because kavos Fleishigs if it's there 24 hours. Always use power of a knife, that's a good eitzah. A frozen item, there's no kavos because it stops the clock. Ice cream, or we froze the soup. A frozen container. A semi-solid there's no din of kavos, mayonnaise, butter, honey, depending on the consistency. If soaked crumbs in water, even less than 24 hours, if the water is nislabein, it loses its shem pas, but it's not a din of kavos because even less than 24 hours, this is shaykh. Midrabanan hilchos Shabbos, we paskin kavos kemavushl, but the logistics don't work because you have to have kavos on Shabbos. Obviously, if you kavos cucumber salad in salt, then avada we kavos kemavusha because it needs 6 minutes. But if it could do it after Shabbos, it's totally in the old machlokes achronim. If the shaykh bishul that takes place, the bishul completed after Shabbos. You're allowed to put a pickle back in the jar and kavos achar kavos. Making cucumber salad for after Shabbos besides the chana should not be done al tasafik bishul. Soaking matzah in water less than 24 hours, l'chari he's still yoitza if he's not makbar on gebrugts. Soaking romaine lettuce in water less than 24 hours, mi'ikad din is mutter. In a little bit vinegar, mi'ikad din is also mutter. Some achoish that it's kavush. The water of the reservoir is mutter on Pesach for numerous reasons. Erev tavshil and kavush is a good tafshil. Erev Tisha B'Av, avoid pickles or any type of, luxury food. The tainig, as the way the Knesset Gedolah says, a frozen esrog is not kavush. It might be spoiled, but it's not kavush. Kavush by hadasim aravos, most poskim are makel. A moist towel is definitely okay. There's no bishul akum by kavush. Kavush by basva dagam is a suffix. Some hold this mutter. Of course, eating it together is a problem, but not kavush. Freezing meat, you don't have to salt it right away because it stops the clock. Bugs in food, there would not be, if there was enough bugs that there's no shishim, it would make a problem to the food. And the sherry cask is an issue, and someone pointed out, I must mention, if someone is kavush, if he's soaked in his learning, he's eingetan in his learning, then he's mavushal, then he's kochs in his learning, he has a geschmack in learning. Thank you all for listening. See you, Ashik.